Hi, and welcome to this live reading from The Man in Black by L.R. Liverpool, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. My name is Fenimore James, and not so long ago, I was unhappy with my life. As you might have already gathered, my problem started with that gall-darned stupid name. May my good old folks forgive me, but who in their right mind would think of calling their child Fenimore? It has jarred me ever since I could remember. Imagine the scene. I was walking along by myself, and suddenly somebody shouted for all to hear, "Hey, Fenny!" What a disgrace. But still better than when some elderly mother's friend pronounced its full version with feeling. "Fenimore James!" Besides all that, I was dissatisfied with my appearance as well, with my clothes to be precise. That was a rather recent discovery. I dressed the same way as everyone else around, conveniently, comfortably, ordinary. You don't really think about what you're wearing when you are working on a farm or sitting on the porch, but one day I came up to a mirror and all of a sudden I clearly realized that I looked like a hillbilly. That made my mom blow up major. Don't get me wrong. I didn't mean to say that hardworking farmers looked like hillbillies. It was just in the light of my new self-spirited discoveries, I realized I did not like the way I looked. My clothes were far from what I wanted to wear. Once, a famous gunslinger visited our town, and I still remember how I wanted a similar hat, a similar jacket with bronze buttons, a similar fiery and flashy neckerchief. The painful truth about those dudes is that everything fits them, and if I really dressed that way, I would have felt uncomfortable and would have looked like the same old hillbilly just dressed up silly for a saloon dance. But I wish my problems would have ended there, because on that clear September morning, 5 years ago, I woke up at dawn with one single thought. I was unhappy with my whole damn life. On the one hand, I lived quite well in a kind of comfortable routine. My father was a county treasurer, but he left his post to engage in what he considered his life calling, farming. We never became prosperous farmers, but we were no beggars either. Things were going steady and smoothly, which meant that, in general, I was confident in the future and confident that tomorrow would be pretty much the same as today. That had its pros and cons. I knew no fear and hunger, but I also didn't know what adventures were like. Our family knew everyone in the town, and everyone in it knew us. I, my two brothers, and my sister were the first generation that grew up on the land. In a word, I was green, as you can understand. But I was always an adventurer at heart. I knew that. I didn't necessarily look like one, though. When a local seller took my word that I would bring him the missing amount owed, I went straight home to get it, not even thinking that I could bring it the next day while passing by, let alone get it out of my head entirely. After all, the amount was meager, and the seller was about 90 years old and was unlikely to remember my face tomorrow. But that was real life. And my fantasies carried me far, far away. Like a 15-year-old boy, I loved reading newspaper stories about various infamous desperados. My parents, of course, indignantly discussed such reports at dinner, and I was nodding and assenting or simply sitting silently, trying not to attract attention. And later I ran with the newspaper to my room to savor the details of their adventures. When my ordinary peaceful gray day ended and I went to bed for hours on end, almost until dawn, I was roaming the world of my dreams. In that world, I was one of them, like all of the most dangerous outlaws of Arizona. That was the territory they inhabited, one should rightly assume. In Arizona, I was certain I would assuredly join up with some famous gang of bandits and become the boss's right hand. Well, or the right hand's right hand. It was not all that important. And why the hell they take under their wing some dummy who couldn't even shoot right was not a question that ever crossed my mind at all. Of course, my dream was my dream, and I could do whatever I wanted in it. I figured the outlaws would not immediately understand how brilliant I was, but when they'd see my many talents, their respect would grow by leaps and bounds, and my name would immediately make it into the newspapers, to the very front pages. I couldn't help but imagine how it would stir all my friends up in my hometown. "I know him personally," they'd proudly tell reporters. And when I'd heroically die in a shootout, they would put a sign at the entrance of the town. "You are entering the homeland of the famous." Here, I always picked up a new name that would sound more impressive, or in any case, less embarrassing than Fenimore James. That was one of the scenarios I always dreamed of, and yet there was another favorite I pictured even more often. My gang rides into yet another town where everyone has heard of our exploits. The ladies are dying to get a kiss from me, and the local thugs turn tail, barely glimpsing our horses in the distance as they skedaddle out of town. A little later, I'm sitting in a saloon with some brutal bastard who terrorizes the whole district is looking for trouble. He calls me by name, and when it comes to shooting, I grab my Colt first and fire with my left hand without even turning in his direction. And next thing you know, this maypole is lying on the floor in a pool of his own blood, a tumped spittoon spilling around his head. Although all these romantic scenes with a posthumous road sign and shooting at the bar were mere fantasies, I still didn't think I would ever have the nerve to kill someone. Besides, as I said before, I most surely did not want to die myself. In my fantasies, bullets always flew by with an invigorating swoosh of air. It would be nice to be able to ride a horse in a sort of a magical bubble, I always thought, protecting me from any danger. I wasn't a fool. It's easy to be a hero when nothing threatens you. Even so, I decided back then to be down and done with these practical thoughts. If I was always rational and prudent, my dreams would forever remain just that, dreams. And so I firmly decided it was time to put everything at stake and to change my own world. The following morning, I told my parents I was going to leave in search of work. The local climate, I claimed, bored me, and I wished a change of scenery. Naturally, everyone believed my little white lie. Everyone except my sister. She probably knew me better than the rest, and she was right not to believe me. Because while I was telling them my high-spirited reasons for cutting out on my own, my confidence suddenly began to evaporate like air from a burst balloon. And the longing for my familiar objects and the warm people around me became so overwhelming that I felt as if I had already been separated from hearth and home for an eternity. Had I really decided that I could so easily leave this world of comfort and safety to travel to nowhere? Look for some ghosts and sleep under a cold sky among cactus, coyotes, and rattlesnakes? I've never even achieved any of my dreamer's goals before. And I'm not talking about simple wishes and hopes, ones I could touch, like when smart rawhide boots with buckles appeared at a local store at the price of a whole cow, and I argued with my best friend that I would save up for them by winter. I've accomplished such common goals many times. What I mean is truly ambitious endeavors. All these gallant and daring ventures riding across vast and free Arizona prairies and mounting brave train robberies, which all looked like a piece of cake far too big for a layman like me. On the other hand, those rowdy rogues from the newspapers somehow managed to get by. And if so, then I could probably do it too. I bet they were not born galloping on horseback, twirling a revolver in their hands. Everyone starts somewhere, and the first thing I had to do was change my god-awful name, purchase an outfit that matched my new image, and start building a reputation. With these thoughts pushing out all my fresh fears, the early hours had turned into afternoon, and I rode my beloved red mare, Messy, across the golden autumn fields to the west, with an unshakable determination to open a new page in the novel of my life.